Welcome to the 47th Annual Victorian Alliance Home Tour. I'm your host, Bonnie Spindler. It might seem like it's easier to live in a modern and new house, but there's an intense joy about living in an older home with character that has evolved over time. Let's take a closer look at what it's like to live in one of these older homes.
I despise open floor plans. I really could not wait to restore the doors in this house where anyone had taken them out. I grew up in a small apartment with my mother and sister where you couldn't even take one phone call in privacy. And as far as I'm concerned, I would even cut the rooms into smaller rooms. I love the idea of having my own personal space, and I absolutely would want that. I hope that everybody ultimately embraces that idea going forward. This is an Edwardian house. It was built in 1907, and it was considered a very modern house for the time. It was not a Victorian, it was an Edwardian. And what that means is the ceilings were lower than in a Victorian house, and the room was symmetric. You notice there aren't any pocket doors here. There's just two parts of this room. This was considered a modern interior. We did have baseboards put in and picture rails. I don't know if they were there to begin with, but we put them back in. We had them reproduced. We also put the doors back in. The doors had been removed and one side of the room. I like the idea of an enclosed room. Everything was faux painted to match the bird's eye maple in the fireplace. The experience of bringing people into this house, this is the joy of my life. I adore having people in this room, and I love the idea of having public rooms and private rooms. Downstairs, we have this beautiful double parlor, and we have a formal dining room, and that's where we bring our guests. Maybe that's European style, but it really makes it so easy to entertain. When we have overnight guests, we go to the second floor to their private bedrooms. It is such a wonderful place to entertain, and people enjoy the formality. Maybe people walk away from here and say, I could never live like this, but when they're here, they really enjoy themselves. They leave with the fact that formality can be very warm. And it's such a warm, enveloping space despite the fact that it's formal, and people generally don't experience that. When you go to someone's house for dinner, very often you're sitting at a kitchen island watching them prepare food, and then you know, to me, it's like sitting in a diner counter. And so, you know, when people come here, we have some appetizers and some cocktails in the formal parlor, and then we move over to the formal dining room. People just really like it. It's to them, maybe it's a blast from the past, but it's true elegance in 2020.
It's very hard to say. There's something that we both loved about Victorians, but we had never lived in one. When we first got married, we lived in a Victorian flat. And I'm not even sure that was intentional. It was, again, some time ago, as usual, there was a housing shortage in San Francisco, and we were looking for some place to rent that we could afford. And it just turned out that this flat that we found was built around 1904 or so. And a lot of it we fell in love with just because of the details. The wainscoting, the little built-in cupboards, and the funny rooms that had, you know, like a pantry. I mean, we never had a pantry. We had a bin for the flour, and it was just kind of interesting. And I'm an engineer. I kind of think in terms of things like a nerd, and I thought, wow, that was really, somebody had enough sense to put in a bin for flour since they baked a lot, you know, that, and I thought that was just cool. And so we both kind of fell in love with it, and it was completely by accident. Well, this room that we're in is what we call the Turkish room, and it was a very common theme in people who lived at this period to have a room that was somehow, quote, what they would call foreign, either Asian, Japanese, or Chinese, Egyptian-based, or Turkish. And that is, this came about because we visited Turkey in the early 90s and completely fell in love with it. My wife is a big Turkophile. She always wanted to go there ever since she was a child. And we ended up in the bazaars, which they are famous for. And Istanbul is particularly famous for them. And put it this way, we were going to spend a couple days in Istanbul and then go up and down the coast of Turkey. 2 weeks later, we were still in Istanbul and hadn't even seen a fraction of what we wanted to see. It was so fantastic. We brought back half of the bazaars with us back home. We had suitcases, plastic bags, bought a couple bags just to fill up because the goods and everything it was just marvelous, and we built this room with it. It's in theme with the time when the people who would have lived here would have had something. It was very likely they would have something like this.
This is the shower scene from Psycho. What was here before, when we moved in 1990, was a modern shower, and this was all redwood on the ceiling, and it was just a 1970s modern bathroom. And I really wanted to have a Victorian 19th century bathroom, even though this was a 1907 house. And this is, as I understand it, the only original marble shower in the city of San Francisco. And we installed this shower, and it is absolutely my favorite thing in the house. You just have not lived until you wash your hair in this shower. So it's got a shampoo valve and hot and cold. And when the water comes out, it's like being under this gushing fountain, which is fabulous. However, if you move this faucet, you get a needle shower, which is also called a kidney shower here, which is basically feels like needles, and you get your own little painful massage here. And it certainly is a great wake up thing in the morning. So this is just the most wonderful. I cannot describe the joy that this shower gives me. So we have this wonderful antique sink here, and we have an original medicine cabinet. We installed a foot bath with a nice chair next to it because you never know when your feet are going to hurt and you need to soak them. We have all original soap dishes, towel racks, toothbrush holders, and everything in here is an antique. The tile we got from London, so that's not an antique, and there are push-button light switches in here, and the light fixture, which was not in here originally, is an antique light fixture, milk glass. There is nothing like having the toilet in a separate room with a door from the sink and the shower. It's terrific. You have to have that. When my husband and I first got married, we lived in a Victorian condo in the Haight. We thought that was the greatest feature of the house. And when we looked for a larger Victorian house and Edwardian house, we said we were going to do everything to preserve that particular architectural feature.
A great deal of pride restoring Victorians in San Francisco, and it's a pleasure to be a part of that and recognize our work all over the city and every corner.
My field is color. I'm a colorist, and my quest is to find out what the client likes personally. And I look at how they're dressed, I look at how they've decorated their interior, the color of their car, and their overt and covert expressions on what they like and what they dislike. And then what I do is show large color cards, about 8-inch by 10-inch, and show various color schemes. Victorian buildings can be spectacular, and plain buildings can be spectacular. It just depends on the taste of the client and the purposes of why they're hiring me. And they tell me what they're after, and I said, this is what it's going to take to make that building look the way you want it to look.
It's important to maintain the Victorians or just any building in the city because of the different temperatures that we have, and the fog and the rain and the sun mainly. If you don't, then you're going to experience more costly repairs and a very expensive paint job the longer you defer the maintenance. So it's important to do it, I'd say, at least every 10 years.
The client calls me because they want something special, and I have to find out what that special look is that they are looking for. And I also find out what their color palettes are, what they like, what they don't like. And I have the ability to make a building look low-key, quiet, moderate, or bright as heck. And if that's the taste of the client, I will caution them and say that this is going to be a polar looking building. Either you like it or you don't like it. I'm going for good taste all the time.
When tourists come to visit the Painted Ladies in San Francisco, I think what's not top of mind is that these are people's homes. People actually live here. It's not a museum. Actually, several families live here, people of all ages, including children. I'm excited to sort of take this house and make it into something that I want to live in, where my family can live, which is really exciting. Getting to remodel the rooms and design things in a way that works with my lifestyle. I do feel a responsibility to preserve the beauty of this home and to really maintain its character and the way that it fits in with the entire row of houses here. So I don't plan on changing the facade at all. It'll stay this way. I may paint it a slightly different shade of pink, but hopefully it'll fit in well with the houses and really look the same as it has looked for over 100 years. I do think I can live a modern lifestyle in an older home. Obviously, I'll have to make some changes. For example, in Victorian times, there weren't as many bathrooms as we have nowadays. So sort of adding bathrooms. Another thing I'd like to do is sort of make the kitchen a little bit larger. Nowadays, you know, we cook a lot. I like to entertain, so making sure that there's enough space in the kitchen for everyone, making sure the bedrooms are comfortable, obviously updating the electricity and the heating of the home. So a lot of things will change. I've been working with my architect to sort of make sure that, you know, we maintain the look and the beauty and the charm of the home, and definitely keep the details, but be able to live in it in a way that makes sense for me and my lifestyle.
The more we lived in the house, the more we understood that the original design was really wonderful. It affords openness and spaciousness when you have all the doors open, great sight lines, but then when you want the intimacy of smaller spaces, they're very easy to close off. As we started understanding why they were designed the way they were and all the thought that went into them, as we sort of unlocked those mysteries, we discovered the architect, the design team really knew what they were doing, and there was very little we wanted to change. So it became more of a restoration project.
The ballroom and the roof deck and conservatory, which I've learned is what you call it, are really the most important features of the house, and it helps it feel like a home and yet allows us to share it in ways that neither Jim or I couldn't have possibly imagined. The ballroom space, which is large, has the ability to carry sound. It's acoustically designed for music, dancing, as well as community meetings, all sorts of things, soirees. As we move on into the roof deck and conservatory, we can always live in this house no matter what the weather. It's really warm in the conservatory. It can be freezing cold in the wind-swept roof deck, or you can move back into the ballroom. It makes it a beautiful space for families as well as great parties.
So old houses really can be adapted to modern life, but sometimes we find that it's us that are adapting to the house. Join us next time for our final segment.